My man. Thank you, brother. My man. Is it on? All right. Good morning. Make sure I got this on here. I don't think I actually need this one. 1 second, guys. This one. All right. Good morning. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Congrats to the graduates. Give them a hand of applause. Okay. Appreciate those kind words, Iman. What you guys don't know is that Iman used to tease me about my flooding pants when I was 8, 9 years old. So I got this pair a little bit longer just for him. You remember them Jordache I had. I'd like to thank Antioch, Pastor Mitchell, for having me today. A few months ago, I heard a voice out of the clear blue sky, and it said, it's time to speak. Speak on what? Then literally a few days after that, I received a call to invite me here to speak today. Coincidence? Maybe. In thinking about what to speak on today, I thought to myself, I wanted it to be something honest, true, and God willing, inspirational to someone with similar circumstances as my own. I spent time thinking and pondering about my first invitation to speak, especially here at Antioch. I couldn't come up with a more honest and true topic than my own personal journey. A journey that's deeply noted in the foundation of Antioch and its members. And the chance to openly address questions I get a lot. How'd you do that? What do you do? How'd you do it? How'd that happen? And as Iman stated, I usually respond to these questions with a very short, succinct answer, straight to the point, to give somebody an encouraging word and not really get into the depth of how I did it. But today I felt compelled to dig a little bit deeper and speak on how and why, in a more spiritual sense. As Dr. Curtis Mitchell instilled in us as kids, you have to nurture, use, and understand your gifts, talents, and abilities. Most importantly, my ability as a child to hear the Spirit was strong. So coming here today, I heard the voice tell me to speak. I received the call, I studied and prepared, bought a plane ticket to Sacramento, and here I am speaking to you today. Trusting in the Spirit. Matthew chapter 13, verse 9 says simply, he who has ears, let him hear. I was born in San Francisco to Deborah Hale and Donald Bernard Hale Sr. I have absolutely no memories of them physically ever being together, but from the pictures and the way they always spoke of each other, I could tell they were deeply in love, and I was born of this love. In fact, 35 years later, she still bears his name. They would separate early on in their marriage, and my mother would be left to care for me by herself in the Bay Area. We would eventually leave San Francisco and head to San Jose. She was in her early 20s, young, vibrant, beautiful, smart, and smart enough to realize that it was time to leave San Jose. See, my grandmother was a very, very interesting woman. She taught me to count money and how to use a triple beam at the age of 3. For those of you who don't know, a triple beam is a scale popularized in the 80s for weighing out drugs. As a child, I had no concept of occupation, but I knew one thing for sure is that my grandmother was a true hustler. She didn't stand but 5'4", but she could move a mountain with her piercing gaze. Men crumbled under her words, and she was a natural-born leader. As I recall, she ran an entire apartment complex. If any of you remember New Jack City, the Carter Apartments, that was my 5'4", 39-year-old grandmother's dream. From what I hear, use of the drugs began as casual fun, a chance to make some money on the side with an occasional medical hiccup or misdemeanor arrest, which by most accounts was worth the risk. But nobody, and I mean nobody in America, was ready for the conversion of cocaine powder into crack rock and how it was pumped into the Bay Area and was subsequently spread throughout the West Coast and the rest of America. This new wave of drug was cheaper to manufacture and distribute and was far more robust because of crack's hyperactive nature. Business was good for grandma, but with crack came far worse medical side effects for users, greater dependency, and laws on crack were often 5 times more harsh than those offenses related to regular cocaine powder. My mother and grandmother would eventually have a falling out, as most mothers and daughters do. So my mother gassed up the Monte Carlo and drove us to Sacramento. Unfortunately, whatever negative energy my mother was trying to escape followed us from the bay to the valley. Over time of being exposed to my family business and recreational drug use, my mother had developed a habit stemming from cocaine. And after several turns of misfortune, the habit became a crutch to shield her from the harsh reality of being a single mother with no help. My mother and I would eventually end up technically homeless, crashing with friends, staying in hotels, shelters with other single mothers. I still remember the setup of the sleeping halls, what seemed like rows and rows and rows of endless beds with mothers and their children, with no home, no food, nowhere to be. This was a very interesting time for me as a child because even though things looked bad and my mother was still strong for me, inside I could always hear a voice that always told me, be strong for your mother, you'll be okay. Hearing this voice at a young age makes sense though. Studies have always shown that humans communicate better when they're young. Closer to birth, the younger we are, the more we rely on intuition and nonverbal means of communicating because we have not yet learned to speak. And speaking often eventually reduces our ability to rely on our intuition because we simply aren't using it as much. In other words, we aren't using it, so we lose it. So it's no wonder that young children, babies, and animals are so in tune with their ability to understand things around them. It's their natural intuition and inner spirit that guides them. And at a young age, my inner voice was very clear. John chapter 8, verse 47 simply states, whoever is of God hears the words of God. The reason why you do not hear is that you are not of God. My mother would eventually begin seeing someone romantically. He was a great guy, funny, smart, tall. He took us in and loved us as his own family. There was only one problem. He was a drug dealer. And listen, I'm not talking about a guy on the street pushing rocks. He was a little bit more sophisticated in his dealings. There were never drugs in the house. I was never exposed to any danger. And he had a great love for me and my family. We stayed right around the corner in a beautiful 1-acre ranch-style home, literally less than a mile from where I stand today. I would play in the backyard for hours, which was the size of a football field at the time. I attended 3rd grade at Lisbon Elementary School in Greenhaven. I would often go to the neighborhood park and play with my friends and spend 50 cents to go swimming in the summers. As far as I knew, life was normal and good. Until early one morning, as the sun was rising, the front door was kicked in by the police. Our beautiful home was raided, searched, and turned upside down while all the adults were detained and the children were grouped on the floor and watched by an officer. The cops found no drugs in the house, nor any illegal guns or firearms, but there was a small amount of drug-related paraphernalia, meaning there were things found in the house that could not be related directly back to the use of drugs, but no actual drugs were found. But you can imagine in the eyes of the courts in the county of Sacramento, this wasn't a good thing. The county of Sacramento eventually told my mother that myself and my 2 toddler-age sisters will be placed into temporary foster care. My mother spoke to me and gently explained that I would have to go live with someone else, but that she'd be coming to get me very soon. I heard that voice again, and it was consistent with what I had been hearing all along. Be strong for your mother. You're gonna be just fine. The week leading up to my departure was absolutely terrifying. Every day for a week I went to bed thinking of being taken away from my best friend, my consoler, my everything, my mother. The day came for me to leave, and I remember it like yesterday. I took out the trash like most 9-year-old boys do, helped out around the house a little bit, and came back inside, and my mother was waiting for me. She told me that someone was here to pick me up, and they grabbed my bag and headed to the front door. It didn't seem real. The house that day was quiet, solemn, and dark. I hugged my mother deeply and told her not to cry, and I loaded myself into the vehicle with a lady I'd never seen before, and we began to drive off. I looked out the window from the car at our amazing home with beautifully manicured grass, cut hedges, fancy cars in the driveway, and my crying mother standing in the doorway, watching her kids being driven away. Tears swelled up in my eyes, but I heard the voice again. Be strong for your mother. You're gonna be just fine. That was the last time I would see our house on Henrietta Drive. We rode not far, just over the I-5 freeway in the pocket, and stopped at a quiet neighborhood in Greenhaven, just around the corner from Kennedy High School. We arrived and I was greeted by Mrs. Betty Mack. She was so happy to see me arrive and welcomed me with open arms and affection. She told me to call her Mima, M-E-M-A. Mima? Okay. I had never had a Mima, but she said that this is what all her grandkids called her. Now, I was coming from a particular kind of background and was used to doing things a particular sort of way. My mother had always given me a certain amount of freedom, and it was usually just her and I, so I got away with a lot. However, that was not the case with Miss Betty Mack. And for those of you who don't know, before she was Betty Mack, she was Betty Raspberry. And if you know anything about the Raspberry family, you know order, structure, behavior, and respect. Don't get me wrong, the Raspberries know how to celebrate and have a good time with the best of them. But when it's time to take care of business, it's time to take care of business. Mima did a great job of getting me on a sleep schedule, a play schedule. She picked me up and dropped me off from school, made sure I was in church, sang in the choir. Oftentimes I would go out and play for hours and hours and come back inside with the filthiest, dirtiest neck you've ever seen. I quickly became accustomed to cotton balls and rubbing alcohol. No child of hers was gonna have a ring around the collar. Lying awake in bed at night, lonely and missing my mother, I still heard the voice. You're fine, right? Listen to me, Mom. She cares about you. And I did. Aside from the voice of my spirit that I figured out by now was actually coming from a special place, I had live voices from people around me who were there to ensure that I was well cared for. HELPS, H-E-L-P-S, the foster agency that had my case. This agency was led by no other than the amazing Sister Kay Mitchell herself, and Sister Angie was my caseworker. This organization assisted countless children, not only in finding homes, but also in finding their way back to their original birth parents, whom had made proper adjustments to regain custody. And I stand here as a living example of their fine work. Wonderful and positive things were happening in my life. I was doing amazing in school, attending church. I was baptized at 5801 at the age of 10 years old by Reverend Mosley. I sang in the youth choir, was an usher, and even met my first mentor, Reverend Don F. Harris. He was not only the son of Sister Mitchell, which automatically makes him church royalty, but he was a brilliant lawyer whom for some reason took to me. Later I figured it was because we had such similar names, Don and Don, DH and DH. He would tease me. He would often call me Little D, and then one day he started calling me Big D. He was the first lawyer I had ever recalled actually meeting and seeing up close. Before that, lawyers was just somebody that you saw when someone was going to jail. But just as life seemed to be getting into a groove, things took a tragic turn, and Mima took sick. Eventually, she would have to move back to Texas, where she would find her final resting place. The weeks, months passed in what seemed like an eternity, and my mother was still unsuccessful in getting me out of custody. This was something that weighed heavy on me, but still that voice inside in the spirit told me not to worry about anything. Things would be great. I listened, and though hurt and frustrated, I believed. The ladies from HELPS asked me if there was any family in Antioch that I would consider living with. This was a new one on me. As far as I had known, this whole process was up to somebody else so far. But I thought about it, and I prayed, and it came to me. Heard that voice again. Sister K, I want to live with the bodies. She said, the bodies? I said, yeah, I want to live with the bodies. She said, okay. She said, I'll go talk to them and see what they say. The bodies were a founding family of Antioch, upstanding, loving, and had more than their share of experience raising kids, not to mention they were the best dressed. They were very fun, but structured, which I had no problem adapting to given my current training with the Raspberries. Mrs. Doris Body and Mr. Alton Body took me into their home as their own and never looked back. But what I didn't realize was that the Bodies came with bonus family. Not only did I have my Antioch, Mac, and Raspberry families for Mima, now I had the Bodies, Odoms, Haddads, and Vons. Rest in peace to the amazing Miss Shirley Vaughn, who was one of the best athletes I ever met. Yes, from 30 feet out, she could take out 2 kids with just one house slipper. Trust me, I found out personally. This was a true blessing. My home family grew exponentially from me and Mima to me, Deidre, Damon, Donna, Doris, Al, Dominique, Danielle, Mark, all at nightly dinner. Deidre was an amazing big sister. She always made sure I wasn't out of pocket, getting into trouble, and she was cool with me tagging along with her and her very beautiful, older Christian Brothers classmates. One of the most accepting and pure individuals you'll ever meet. She's always been there for me, and she's always led quietly by example. Donna, on the other hand, nothing quiet about the way she leads. Strong, independent, beautiful, her height and her spirit never matched. She taught me at a young age to be confident and direct with my words. And Damon was the perfect big brother. He was smart, popular, had the flyest gear that I could steal, and was a superstar athlete. This was the first time I had actually known anyone who played college sports. His calm demeanor and smooth approach showed me a different side of what it meant to be a young black man. With me standing only 5'2" at the time, I literally looked up to him. He was my first role model. So as you can see, my life was filled with really high highs. Family life was stable. I excelled in school, sports, and church. But at the same time, there were still custody hearings, social workers, and scheduled limited visits with my mother that ranged from 30 minutes to 60 minutes. And still no word from my father. None at all. Time would pass, months, and now years. I had grown into a young man and was completing the 9th grade at Hiram Johnson when, out of what seemed like the clear blue sky, the courts called up and said, "You can go back to your mother." This came as a complete surprise because honestly, by this time, I had given up on that fairy tale. I had suppressed those feelings down so hard that I couldn't feel them anymore. I was torn, but I felt it was the right thing to do to return to my birth mother. But I still had that voice inside, but now it was yelling at me. And after less than a full year living with my birth mother, I made the critical decision to check myself back into the Body family. It was my home, and it was where I was most productive. I knew it, my mom knew it, and the Spirit knew it. Imagine the gravity of having to make that decision at the age of 14 years old. But the Spirit spoke, and I listened. And again, the Spirit was right. I returned back to the Bodies. Life took off yet again. My grades shot through the roof. I was back in church, and I was dominating the football field as one of the city's premier athletes. The Spirit hadn't led me wrong yet. One of the truest things I could ever tell you, if I ever had the chance to ever share anything, if you think and act from the Spirit, God will always put the necessary blessings in your path. I was always good at listening to the Spirit, but my senior year in high school, I learned in real life the importance of setting goals and doing research. I had my mind set on a few very clear things. Graduate with a 4.0, or as close as possible. Get into USC, score a certain amount of touchdowns, and play in an all-star game. Proverbs chapter 2, verses 1 through 5. My son, if you receive my words and treasure up my commandments with you, making your ear attentive to wisdom and inclining your heart to understanding. Yes, if you call out for insight and raise your voice for understanding, if you seek it like silver and search for it as hidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. I listened to the Spirit. I did my research. I learned more about my goals and asked God for help. I listened, the knowledge and ideas came, and I ordered my steps based on the feedback from above. Under the watchful eye of Alton and Doris Body, I would complete my senior year of high school, the MVP of the varsity football team, playing in the annual Optimist All-Star game, and senior year, I received 11 A's and 1 B, and scored a top percentile SAT score for the area, was admitted into the USC School of Architecture, all at the age of 17, with a full financial package and multiple scholarship awards, and a head full of blonde hair, which I was promptly told to dye back before graduation. I had made it to USC, which was amazing simply because it was the only school I had applied to. When you know, you just know. I was listening to the Spirit, setting goals, attending classes, but I had another big one coming up. You see, I had given up football after my high school senior year and turned down several options to play in college, to be a normal student and focus on my USC experience. This idea didn't last past me attending my first USC football game. I caught the bug that fast. I immediately began researching the USC football program and how to approach trying out. As you can imagine, USC had and still has some of the world's finest athletes, so competition was fierce. But I had played with greats of my own. Since Pop Warner in high school, I'd done battle with guys like Ontario Smith, Lance Briggs, Dante Stallworth my entire life, so I knew I could hold my own. My game was legit. I quietly trained for the tryouts, went to class, kept to my own business. I went to the open tryout, did my thing, and was invited to winter training and spring football camp. During winter training and spring ball, I gained 20 pounds of muscle and increased my 40-yard dash by a full tenth of a second, dropping from 4.4s to high 4.3s, and set strength and conditioning records for my weight class that still stand today. With the help of God's guidance and my working hard at following the Spirit, I had molded myself into a world-class student athlete at one of the country's most prestigious private universities. Learning to study and research with clear intent was key to my making my goal in playing at USC. I studied for my classes diligently. I studied for football diligently. Hours and hours spent on my classwork, hours and hours spent in the film room, and hours of training and practicing. And it was simple. The more I studied and searched for the answers, the better athlete and student I became. One day before practice, in a full team meeting with 110 players and a full coaching staff, Coach Pete Carroll surprised me by making me stand up in the middle of the meeting and announced that I would be given a full ride athletic scholarship. My athletic experience and college experience at USC was nothing short of spectacular. We would go on to play in 4 bowl games, win 4 conference titles, 2 national championships, and I actually played with 3 Heisman winners. But some other statistics included 1 separated shoulder, 1 bruised AC joint, 1 broken clavicle, 1 hernia, 2 broken ankles, 3 concussions, 5 surgeries. With that said, the NFL was not in my future. Though I had studied and loved the game since I was a child, and they had taken me across the world and given me tremendous experiences, I had to listen to the voice inside, clear as day, telling me, "You've taken this one as far as you can go. Let go." In the spring of 2004, I graduated from USC with a degree in political science and immediately was recruited to work in sports management for a well-known, reputable sports agency. And it wasn't by mistake. I saw an opportunity while I was playing. I devised a plan. I researched it, put it into motion, and the next thing you know, I was being brought in to meet with the principal agents and owners of the company. Within my life of recruiting and managing professional athletes, you could have easily confused me with one of my clients. I was young, fresh out of college, still had the physique of an athlete, and had access to finances to feed several third world countries. This elevated fast life of athletes, celebrities, and big deals came natural to me and was not hard to adapt to. But money and fun does not bring happiness. And after a few years, I reached a point of knowing that I was unfulfilled and unhappy with what I was doing for a living. This led to a lot of financial instability, irresponsibility, and just terrible behavior, in which I spent money in an attempt to fill a void of happiness. I had often missed football and regretted not even being able to participate or try out for the NFL due to my injuries. But looking back at the age of 21, when most of my other counterparts were getting millions of dollars, trust me, I didn't need it. I was great at my job, but had no idea how money, business, and life actually worked. In my life, in my early 20s, I squandered hundreds of thousands of dollars, I'm ashamed to say. So God had a plan and knew how to pace me. Psalms chapter 121, verses 1 and 2 simply state, "I lift up my eyes to the hills. From where does my help come? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth." I was sitting in a penthouse condo on Wilshire Corridor overlooking LA when I received a call to come personally work for a very successful actor. This seemed to be right on time, seeing as I was growing tired of my current profession and going further and further unfulfilled. This guy was a successful actor, producer, sports agent as well, and real estate mogul. I owe so much to taking this offer as it provided access to the entire entertainment industry, sports industry, real estate, finance, and fashion. I took a severe pay cut, which was a sacrifice I was willing to make in order to learn. And my goal at the time was simply to learn the business. This job and my boss taught me the importance of multitasking, not only across projects, but across multiple industries, all at once. This real-life experience felt extremely chaotic and at times unnerving, but I was determined to adapt. Overseeing construction on high-rise buildings, pulling city permits, negotiating with city officials, conceptualizing and approving architectural plans, meeting with professional athletes whom are potential investors, reading scripts, going to table reads, scouting new properties, and attending fashion shows could have been any of the myriad of things that you saw me do all in a single day. And the best thing about my job was that it was centered around learning hands-on and being able to perform under pressure. The stakes were high, and a lot of money was at risk. And in most cases, I had to figure things out on the fly. This not only built up my experience drastically, but also increased my confidence in business. There was no way to keep up with my job without becoming an amazing executor. 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 6. The point is this: whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. So recall now that I was making 10 times less than what I was previously making, but I was gaining 10 times the value in terms of new relationships and pure experience. And if nothing else, this job taught me I could literally do anything I put my mind to. One of my proudest moments and achievements was participating in the design, fundraise, development, and licensing, construction, launch, marketing, promotion, and continued operation of One Zen Lounge in Studio City in 2012. It has been said that most restaurants fail within 3 years. Zen Lounge will be serving brunch later today. But as these highs were highs, there were still lows. During this time, I suffered the loss of my father. I received a call from my uncle asking me to come visit my dad in the hospital. He had become very ill, and they didn't expect him to last long. One of my good friends gave me a ride to the hospital in support and stayed with me the entire time. To think, it was only 10 minutes away from where I lived, the hospital where my dad lay. We lived in LA at the same time, and yet never connected. When I walked into his hospital room, he laid in the bed resting. I could see his eyes light up. Even though he had not physically seen me in probably 25 years, he knew exactly who I was. My uncle had warned me earlier that he could not speak and could not move very much. I walked over to him and said a few words, and he just gazed at me with what felt like disbelief and love combined into one look. I grabbed his hand, and he squeezed mine, and he just stared at me, and I stared back. This hurting, debilitated man somehow made me feel as if I was looking into a mirror. We shared a very calm moment, and for the first time in all my memory, the burn I had had in my heart buried deep inside for him was smoldered. In that moment, he had asked my forgiveness, told me he loved me, and said goodbye, all with no words. I was at peace with him, and he with me. Days later, I received a call from my uncle that Donald Bernard Hale Sr. had passed away. Till this day, I swear I can feel the moment when he left this earth. The strength of God-given connection is unmatched, no matter the history or circumstances. My dad had recently, and by recently I mean within a few weeks, had converted to Islam. My uncle explained to me that because of this, it was very important for me to come to the burial. I was never really one for funerals, ever. But I learned from my uncle, whom also practices Islam, that I had duties to carry out as the firstborn son. I said, duties? We just got to come, right? He said, oh, no, 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 no. He promptly alerted me that as the firstborn son, I was the only one that was allowed to touch the body. I was conflicted, to say the least. Why did I have to do this for a man who had never, in my eyes, done anything for me? And even lived in the same city as me and never pursued a relationship? Why should I do anything for him? I contemplated, I thought, and I prayed on it. My uncle then told me a story about how he and my dad would come to USC and watch practice while I played. And I never knew it. My uncle tried to get everybody together, but my dad didn't want anybody interfering with what I was doing with school or sports. Not only did we live in the same city, but here he was at my practices. I was annoyed and confused. I didn't understand how or why he would choose this path. And then I simply remembered holding his hand and looking into his eyes. That memory was all I needed to motivate me to get there, to execute, to do what I needed to do as a man, regardless of the circumstances. The preparation of the body and the burial went over smooth, and I performed my duties without discord. Until that moment, you could have never told me that with my own hands, burying my estranged father would be one of the most enriching moments of my life. Galatians chapter 6, verse 7. Do not be deceived, God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that will he also reap. Life and work went on faster and faster, as it always seems to do. And as I reached a personal critical mass, a tipping point, if you will, I had amassed enough relationships and know-how to take on my next big plan, which was to move into independent film production. I linked up with one of my good friends, and we became production partners. We sat in his living room and came up with a story and a plan while watching bad films on Netflix. We developed a story entitled Sister Code. We wrote the story, raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, oversaw casting, principal photography, post supervision, marketing, and released it as executive producers. I even took on a small acting role as the very attractive bad boy bartender who has an affinity for young ladies. Hard to believe, I know. But producing this film was monumental. One of the most famous actors in the world told me when I completed this film that every finished film is a small miracle, meaning there are hundreds of moving parts, people, and assignments, and they all have to eventually fit together to form a cohesive project. And hopefully, random people enjoy it and are willing to pay you money for it. We crammed 10 days into a hectic shoot. Anything that could have went wrong did. Often found myself looking to the heavens asking, how are we gonna get through this? How are we gonna get the money? How are we gonna get this actor happy? How are we gonna complete this project? But again, I still heard that voice. It said, stay strong, you'll be all right. So I got through that. Years of multitasking had trained me to handle big projects under extraordinary pressure. So I was cool, calm, and collected, even though on the inside, it was a tornado going on. Without a doubt, everything in my life, my childhood, the misfortune, the hurt, and the pain, was training for this. Sister Code was released in theaters and eventually serviced throughout North America for home entertainment, digital, and was licensed by BET. Not a bad start for a first-time producer. Having been so heavily involved in the distribution of Sister Code, I learned the nuances of what happens with a film after it's finished in this process. I thought to myself, I think this is where the money is. But not being driven just by money, I also fell in love with the process of being able to help other artists bring their projects to life and show them how to platform them and actually monetize them. Myself and my other two partners from Sister Code got together and decided that distribution was worth exploring with our full attention. Why distribution? Simply because the ability to handle more product by distributing multiple films versus producing one or two films at a time. And the business structure favors a distributor. This was something that I learned at Sony. So we all pitched in countless days and nights, reading, researching, meeting, talking, researching, more researching, and more researching, and drumming up exploratory business around town, trying to figure out how to acquire films. And I'm proud to say that after a year and a half of negotiating, we signed an exclusive deal with Sony to distribute as a strategic partner. And on December 2nd of 2016, across 640 screens, we distributed our first film entitled Believe, which was a faith-based film centered around a young African-American boy whose faith alone, under the worst conditions, helped touch the lives of those around him. Believe will go on to win Christian Film of the Year 2016. In 2017, we projected to sign 5 new films by the end of the year. It's June and I have 17. We were set to explore animation in 2018. We have our first animated feature opening in theaters October nationwide across 1,500 theaters, and 4 more animation films for children slated for release through 2020. I say all this to say, if I can go from a childhood affected by drugs to winning national championships at USC, all with the voice of the Spirit, from homelessness to opening one of the premier African-American-owned restaurants in Los Angeles, with no background in food or beverage, by researching and studying in the Spirit, from foster care without parents to parenting directors, producers, actors, writers, and other creatives by distributing their products with a major studio deal, with no formal training or education in entertainment, all from my ability to execute by listening to the Spirit. You can do anything. Graduates, we need you. We need you to press on. We need you to strive to improve, to create. We need you in your own way to help heal a broken world. A world more concerned with Wi-Fi connectivity than human connection. Disconnected from the one true signal that matters most, God. You can do anything you put your minds to. Correction. You can do anything you put your spirit to. The mind will follow. If your thoughts are focused from the Spirit and God can do all things, then your mind is talking to the Spirit, which is direct to God, then that means your mind contains the power of God. Simple. Listen to the Spirit, take time to create. We are all creators, and all must do so, even if it's nothing more than keeping a journal. Connect with your creative spirit and express that God-given energy. Research and absorb. Observe the information that has been given to you. Look upon this information with the intent to understand. Ask for understanding. Take the time to record your discoveries, store them, and revisit this information. All the answers you need are never too far to reach. Take action and execute. Steer clear of the need to chase free time, AKA idle time. Once you're out of high school, it's technically all free time. Nobody is going to tell you how to run your time. Sure, they can advise you, but the decision is yours from here on out. Nobody's going to wake you up at 8 a.m. for class. Nobody's going to make you go to bed early the night before a test. Nobody's going to make you take care of your body or your health. Adopt the thought process that there's always something to be done. Stay inspired. Always surround yourself with people, places, activities, and ideas that motivate you. The saying goes, show me your 5 closest friends, and I'll show you your future. Be careful who and what you have around you, and intentionally keep positive energy around as much as possible. Make sure those around you are supportive and can be there to support you mentally and emotionally. If you find yourself in an unsure place with your surroundings, repeat this. Lord, I pray that you bring into my life anyone and anything that you see fit for moving forward in the kingdom of God. And please, Lord, remove anything and anyone from my life that is not present for furthering your will and purpose. And watch God work. Congratulations to the graduates. And thank you for allowing me an opportunity to share a little bit about my story. A story in which, no doubt, is a testament to God's grace, God's glory, and mercy. Walk confidently in your truth, whatever your truth may be. You're the only person in the world with your story, and God gave it to you for a reason. Instead of tuning into YouTube and Netflix, tune into your inner spirit. Set goals, research, and execute. And with that, I'll say, this journey of mine has been something amazing and something incredible. But without my foundation, my family, my spirituality, and my faith in God, I couldn't be here today. So I ask you all just to persevere, fight, and believe in yourself, and know that you have the Spirit of God. And in closing, I just wanted to say thank you to Sister Kay Mitchell, the Raspberry family, the Mack family, my mom sitting right there, Deborah Hale, Doris Body, Deidre, my church family, and just know that I'm always here for you. If you need anything, please reach out. Entertainment, life, love, I've seen it all. And in my 35 years, I couldn't be more proud than to have my first ever chance to speak here with you guys. Congratulations and keep fighting on.
Come on, put those hands together. We welcome you here to the Antioch Church. All right, church, come on, let's say it. We are blessed to be, that's it, a blessing to those that we encounter. Welcome. Progressive. Where all people matter to God. We are on a mission to grow healthy disciples through our vision, divinely provided 100